Welcome to the Inflection Podcast, where we explore the pivotal moments that have shaped us into who we are today. I am your host, Anebi, and I can't wait to dive into these moments with you. Let's get it.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Inflection Podcast. It's super fantastic to have you with me, Arjun, the CEO of Doola. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me, and it's been fun following you along on LinkedIn as well too. So excited to chat.
Yeah, hey, I'm a LinkedIn nerd. So from one LinkedIn nerd to another one, it's always fantastic to connect. But as you know, one thing I'm obsessed about is the concept of inflection points. Arjun didn't just drop out of the sky, July 18th, and start doing what Arjun does. Like it's been process for you and a journey. So I just want to dive into that a little bit for what the journey has looked like, starting Doola and what the impetus in the first place was for that.
I totally agree on inflection points. I think oftentimes there's that picture which I come back to where it's a flat line and then all of a sudden it starts to go up. And during that flat line, you're thinking, this is pointless. This is pointless. Why am I doing this? This is pointless. And then all of a sudden, overnight success and tip of iceberg, etc. And behind any outcome or tip of the iceberg is a lot of layers of hard work, late nights, early mornings, persistence, doubts. Should I stop? Should I stop? Should I stop? This feels cringe, etc., whatever it might be. But I think even the story of Doola is probably a story of that. And I've, been following and learning more about stories of other founders too, trying to educate other founders on them as well. And started the business because we ended up paying lawyers $30,000 to get our first company off the ground. And that sounds insane. And you might think, why would you do that? Well, we didn't know what we didn't know. And lawyers said, hey, you should do this. And we thought that was the price of doing business. We had just gotten our first check from investors and thought, okay, part of doing business, let's set this up. And that business actually failed and had to shut it down. There was a pivot. And during that process, thought, wait a second, crap, we're going to have to go through that process again. But then naively, and I think actually being naive can be very powerful when you're starting anything, it forces you to think about things from first principles, or even if it's done this way, does it have to be done this way? We thought, what if you could click a button and automate the initial filings, which is truly just paperwork, and then tie everything together to create this business in a box where you get your company, bank account, and taxes wrapped by compliance and customer support. And that way, as a founder, you can start your business and not feel like you've been thrown to the wolves and not have questions around, should I form in Delaware or Wyoming, which is one of the most common questions we get. And, should I form an LLC or a C Corp? And those are, again, common questions, but without having a source of truth or someone you can go to, you end up Googling and you get a migraine from looking at the results. So our goal is, again, founders don't know what they don't know. How can you give them peace of mind that they're going to go through this process and get it right so that they can focus on what they do best while Doola handles the rest?
Yeah, that is fantastic. And in my experience, so I've registered a bunch of businesses with a whole host of tools, some more successful than others, some have had to kill, but many times at least at the very beginning, the biggest hang up for me was how to start, right? All the paperwork, how to incorporate, what state should I incorporate in? And for a lot of people, that's oftentimes, now it's not the hardest part of the equation, but just getting started the right way can make or break your business later on or be such a headache to deal with. So I think a tool like Doola and the services, because you are expanding your services that you provide, really is a game changer for a lot of entrepreneurs around the world. So when you got started, did you focus on the US market and then quickly realize, crap, we can expand this to serving other entrepreneurs outside of US who want to incorporate in the US? What did that look like for that pivot for you?
To start, we realized that there weren't many companies that would support non-US residents who did not have a US social and who weren't physically based here. And at first, I actually thought, okay, it must be because it's illegal or there's some federal restriction. Yeah. Turns out that was not the case. It was just that it's more complex in certain cases. You have to fax forms to the IRS, explain different tax filings. That stopped a lot of companies from saying, let's offer support to this market. The US customer maybe is a bit easier to deal with. They have less questions and certain parts of the process are faster. But to me, it was a bit mind-boggling because 4.25% of the world's population is in the US, which means 95.75% is outside the US. And if you're ignoring that, you're ignoring the whole market effectively. And for us, we thought, okay, there's a huge market out there of entrepreneurs who need this, who want to take that dream idea and turn it into their dream business. I think this comes back to something I've seen, and I've seen this in founders we work with, I've seen this in people I know, this idea that talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. Meaning, if you can give people all over the world the opportunity, and that could be education, that could be knowledge, that could be quite literally, hey, we're going to help you start your company, that talent can really reach its full potential. And I think a company is really a vehicle to that. But I see this time and time again. There's founders all over the world, don't have the connections, the access, or the knowledge. And if we can put that in front of them, huge things can happen, and really an inflection point can happen.
Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing that. Well, as you've worked on Doola and you've had the unique opportunity to work with so many different founders, right? What are some untapped opportunities that you're seeing with tech in general, but with some of the conversations you've been having?
Oftentimes, while it is fun and sexy to think about what's coming, and I think, right now, AI is all the rage, generative AI and new AI use cases and the singularity movement, et cetera. And that isn't to say the technology is leading to a new shift, the pace of development and changing of jobs, et cetera. But I actually think what's an interesting question to ask, and sometimes even more interesting, is what isn't going to change? What's going to stay the same? That. And if you ask yourself that question, you can then think, okay, if this isn't going to change, you can pretty much build a very durable strategy and business around it. And I think entity formation, or starting and running and growing a business, is something which is really in the blood of humanity, right? Since I guess the cavemen were kind of entrepreneurs, figuring out how to make fire, whatever it is. But up until today and going forward, people will always want to start businesses, which doesn't mean there can't be innovation. But I think that shows, okay, if we play a long-term game and invest in the right things now, people will still be looking to form in a few years. Doesn't matter if there's macroeconomic concerns or if there's macroeconomic boons when things would be accelerated. So I think to answer, what do I think there's opportunity? There's opportunity everywhere, and that's what surprises me. We have customers doing software as a service, real estate, e-commerce, financial services, consulting, content creators, monetizing just pure information. But I do think the biggest bucket we see is e-commerce. And I think the reason for that is when COVID started, e-commerce was optional. And maybe we could sell online, but we'll have this brick and mortar storefront. Overnight, quite literally, you went from being maybe in person or part in person, part digital to fully online. And that shift forced every business to say, how do we sell online? And tools like Shopify, website builders, whatever they might be, made it easier now to go from 0 to 1 to get an online business set up. And I think those tools have made it so that starting a business, whether you're selling on Amazon or Shopify or Etsy or selling your own services online, has become easier than ever. And that's the biggest chunk of businesses that we work with. And it's very cool to see people, because I think everyone has that idea or side hustle in them, saying, okay, I have the idea and I can use Doola plus a combination of my favorite platform to really get this full business off the ground.
Yeah. And that is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. As you look back on your journey, what are some things you know now and you wish you knew then?
Biggest one is, or there's a few. I think the first one is, it's very hard to identify the types of people and the processes that can come in at the right stage. So I'll give you some examples there. When you're starting and it's yourself, maybe a few people, you are rolling up your sleeves, doing everything at once. And everything means, like, quite literally, you're doing customer support, you're selling, you're doing your marketing, all of these different things. And as you grow, oftentimes you don't need more people doing that. You actually need more people who can do one or two of those things really well. And instead of having, 10 people who can all go broad, it's actually having more specialization. And I think that is a transition. So I think that's one thing. In hindsight now, it's clear, like, oh, way earlier should have gotten someone who knows customer success really well versus me just trying to figure that out. Or way earlier, holy crap, we're seeing this traction in this one outbound vertical. Let's get someone who knows that really well in there. So I think that's one thing for sure. I think the second thing, and this comes back to what we talked about at the beginning in terms of the inflection points, it's a grind. And I think the biggest thing is, whether it's anything, whether it's search engine optimization, creating content, outbound sales, shipping and iterating product, all of those things.
Yeah.
The only way you hit those inflection points is by doing the thing daily, weekly, whatever it is. Weekly is better than
Yeah.
daily is better than weekly is better than monthly, but doing it consistently. Quarterly is better than not at all. And I think what I would say there is that you have to start in order to see the results. Change won't happen without change. And I think
Yeah.
there's this everyone expects the results to be linear. But if in anything it looks like this, sometimes you actually go down and then it swings back up. But
Yeah.
that plateau of latent potential, I think, is where most people give up and most people stop. But I do believe if you're consistent and you persist and you iterate through that cycle, you're bound to see the results. And the way I think about it is name someone or a company or something who's done anything for, I was going to say 10 years, but let alone 5 years or 2 years or 1 year. Name anyone, person, place, company, thing that's done something for a year consistently and hasn't seen results. I can't think of many things. Like if you do anything for a year, you're either going to get good at it or it's not going to work and you'll be like, I'm doing this for a year longer, so I have to iterate. But whatever it is, you're going to figure out a way to make the thing work. So I think that's the biggest thing is like, what's the bottleneck? Is it that there's not enough reps or volume coming in, or is it blocked somewhere else? And just focusing on that, undoing it. So whether it's outbound, like, hey, reach out to one person a day. If you're trying to grow your audience, tweet once a day. I just saw this thing where Picasso, I think he lived until he was 90 something. And from his like age 20 to age 90, he put out close to 30,000 pieces of work. So someone did the math and said, holy crap, wait, that means he was creating one piece of art almost every single day until he was 90 something. And when you put it that way, it's like, okay, you want to be like Picasso, you want to be great in anything, do the thing daily. Like these accidents don't happen. So I think that was a really cool example for me of, in anything, content creation or sales, if you do something every single day, and it doesn't have to be an hour of it or 2 hours, just like a couple of minutes, then you're going to see results. Because not many other people doing it. You outlast them through endurance.
Yeah. And that's the fascinating thing about reps. It compounds over time. At first, you see incremental results, but at a certain point, people have called it so many different things, right? The multiplier effect, and so many other things, right? Or flywheel. You're pushing, you're doing the reps. Maybe you're seeing incremental progress, or sometimes it feels like none at all. And then at a certain point, you hit traction, and then it feels like you're getting outsized returns. So the amount of effort you have to put in to get more ROI out of it, changes where you're getting more ROI for smaller and smaller increments because you've done all the work up front. Like I'm doing a workout regimen right now. I'm going through CrossFit. So the reps, right? Looking at things from break it down into sets of so many different reps. I'm increasingly seeing that all around me, where at first you get started, you're using a smaller weight, maybe 10 pounds or whatever you're able to stand. But the more you keep doing that, you keep getting better at form, and then you want more weight, and then you keep going, and you're getting better over time, and then you see the results, which also is it reinforces your confidence. Oh wow, I did all of this, and then it pushes you to do more. So that's something I see everywhere right now, and it's encouraging for me too, looking at life through that lens. There's also another framework, I don't know if I'd call it a framework, that I came across some years ago, and it's like the regions of competence or learning, where at first you get started, right? Unconscious incompetence. You're dumb as a brick, you don't know what you don't know. And then you learn some, and you get to, conscious incompetence, where like, okay, I know some things, but holy crap, now I know there's a lot I don't know. You're beginning to know some of the things. And then there's conscious competence, where, all right, you're getting good. Some might even consider you an expert, but you still have to, think through it and research. And then there's unconscious competence. You ain't got to even think about it. It comes naturally. Now, I think that's hard to get to in life, in anything, because it's just so much you could learn. But someone like Picasso, you could probably say he was probably, in that zone where he was really freaking good. But even at that level, you're still learning. And I think that's the humility aspect of that, of saying, I probably know a lot about this, but yeah, I could be 1% better than I am already. So that's something that fascinates me.
Yeah, that's spot on. I completely agree.
Yeah. My next series, or if I did write a book or something, will probably be, and I hope someone doesn't steal this point, to do, I'll read the book, it's The Nature of Obsession. I feel like for a lot of the greats who've done anything, and we could put obsession on a scale, right? I feel like you almost have to be obsessive about that thing to a certain degree. And I think there's such a thing as too much obsession, but I feel like you almost have to be obsessive. If we look at everyone who's built remarkable companies and products, like they were either obsessive about a lot of things or about a few things with that they went super deep with. And I think that's a necessary ingredient for success, finding those things to be obsessed about.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also if it's something you're obsessed with, it's probably because you find it interesting or you've gotten better at it or you see the potential. And you also have to partly enjoy it more than someone else to be obsessed with it too. And if you enjoy it even slightly more than someone else, they're going to give up or stop before you. And that means you're going to just do it longer and you see more results too. So I agree, like there's a spectrum for sure, but I think the obsession or the laser focus on something, and there's probably synonyms there or similarities between focus and obsession, but yeah, like being the laser focus and the hey, I'm going to think about this thing a lot every day for a long time. Again, good results happen from anyone who does anything for a year, let alone 2 years, let alone 5 years.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So one other thing I'd like to explore, right? When you're not leading teams or building a successful business, what fills your tank? How do you recharge?
There's this miracle drug I take. It's called sleep. That's honestly the single biggest thing. Single biggest thing. I can tell on a day when I don't get enough sleep, I'm crankier when I respond to messages. I feel like I get set off more easily from things which I wouldn't before. Less stamina during the day on calls. That's the single biggest thing. It's the keystone. And it's not rocket science. I know everyone says and knows like sleep more, but it's just the single biggest predictive factor for whether or not I'm going to be on the next day. That being said, look, like life happens sometimes and you don't always get sleep, and that's not an excuse to like not go to work and continue to go through and talk to customers. But I know for sure if like I have a great night's sleep, like you're already going into the day in a much better note. Then I think after that, probably the other thing that fuels me, and this is as literal as it gets, but I like to exercise in the morning. And when I do that, obviously you get benefits from the hour, 90 minutes, 30 minutes of exercise, whatever it is, the endorphins, you're pushing your muscles, etc. You get benefits then, but I also like to think of it as I'm not just doing it for the benefits during that 1 hour. I'm doing it for the other 23 hours when I'm going to have more energy later in the day. I don't need as much caffeine. I'm going to sleep better at night because my body's tired. And in that sense, that is also another thing which quite literally fuels me. And then, when you exercise in the morning, I don't want to eat as poorly as well because I just ate or exercised well. So then I eat better. So I think the fuel for me, like outside of work, is I think I've gotten into exercise more so just because it's a good way to stress relief for sure. That's a huge one. And then it's cool because in the life of startups or companies or everything, so much is out of your control, and that's life. There's the market, which you can't truly control, but you can influence. But I think the one thing I like a lot about any type of exercise, doesn't matter what you're doing, is that you can completely control every variable, whether it's your diet or sleep, maybe not so much sometimes if fires come up, but the diet and the actual routine, if you dial that in, you will see the results. And I think to me, that's really cathartic because that's the one thing I truly have full control over in a world where you don't have everything. And it makes me better at what I do outside of that too. So that fuels me. I guess it's that specifically outside of work.
Hey, thanks for sharing that. And lastly, what is something, a word of advice or a few things you'd leave for the person who's on the precipice? They might have a business idea they're trying to work on, or maybe they're a freelancer trying to legitimize their business and incorporate a business around that. But for whatever reason, they don't know the next step, or maybe they're afraid. What would you leave with such a person right now who's listening?
Two things. First, every single person overthinks how much other people are thinking of them. Every single we're all conceited naturally, but we think about, oh God, I'm doing this thing. What are they going to think of me? The truth is there's so much going on that if you post something or do something, people might see it, but then 5 minutes later, they're going to be thinking, crap, I forgot to order dinner tonight. Or, oh my God, I forgot to send the email. And like, they're not thinking of you. So with that in mind, the second thing is, given that, and this is hard to do, is just do the thing. And that does not mean you have to quit your job and fully commit to doing something and blow all your life savings to do it. No. But even if you're in a job now and you have an idea for a fashion consulting business, let's say you like fashion, you think like, hey, I could go shopping with you. I'll give you advice on clothes to buy and you charge me, or I'll charge you about, $100 an hour for 4 hours. Text 10 friends and pitch them on it. Create a Google Doc that explains the business and say, hey, are you interested? Do a Twitter thread on it. Just do something to validate, hey, is there anyone interested? And I think that's the biggest thing, which is it's very easy to think I have to go all in and quit my job and start this entire thing and buy clothing and buy merchandise and set up a website, but start small and just start with something. And oftentimes putting yourself out there is what leads to that asymmetric upside, is that leads to that inflection points. Closed mouths don't get fed at the end of the day. And by putting yourself out there, you're creating that surface area for luck. And, I believe luck is when preparation meets opportunity. The opportunity comes from putting yourself out there. And then the preparation, even though it's sometimes hard to see, is everything you've done in your life up until now. And then the more bets you can take, or the more swings you take, the better shot you have of hitting that home run. But you got to start with something and start small.
Yeah, I love it. And when they are ready to incorporate the business, just Doola it, right?
Just do it, indeed. I love it. That's the slogan. You got it down.
I love it. So, hey, thank you so much, Arjun, for joining me today. I appreciate the generosity of your time.
No, thank you. And this was a fun combo. I mean, I learned a bunch from you just listening now too. And yeah, end of day, I think frameworks are helpful. Advice is helpful. Motivational quotes are helpful, but just taking that first step can be the hardest thing. But oftentimes it feels incredible to just do it.
100%.